All right, golfers, if you are somebody who has way too much hip turn early in your backswing, you might be creating a problem later on with the sequence of how things get to the top. And I'll clarify what that means. You know, we obviously want to be able to create some good rotation in the backswing and allow the hands and arms to get back to a certain place. The problem is if I have too much hip turn really early, I might drag my hand path way too far inside. And then what ends up happening is because I effectively peak my range of motion with my hip turn way too soon, so from P1, which is the setup, to P2, which is at shaft parallel, if I over rotate my hips really early, number one, I'm going to see the hands drag really far across my chest. Now my trail arm is going to get stuck behind me. I'm going to have to do something to create space, which can oftentimes tip the club across the line. Also, I end up with the lead arm way too pinned across my body. What you will typically see from that scenario is either a poor reaction from the trail arm to create space, or what you'll see is the hands get so deep so early with the hip turn, but as soon as the hips stop, there's nowhere for the hands to go. And then to create space, you'll see a lot of arm lift. So you'll see almost an excessive amount of hand depth really early because the golfer peaked their range of motion with the hips too fast. Nowhere to go, a lot of arm lift. Now they end up really upright, a lot steeper coming down or steeper, and then reacting to shallow it out really late, which can lead to a lot of blocks, a lot of hooks. Anytime that your club is very steep mid downswing and you have to compensate for it at the last second, it can create a problem where your path gets way too far from the inside, and obviously nightmare scenarios at the bottom of the swing. So in that situation where the golfer's rotating their hips way too far early on, you have to work on flipping that script, meaning limiting the amount of hip turn you get earlier so that you can complete your turn and structure later in the backswing. We don't want to have such excessive hip turn in that scenario where my hands and arms are stuck and there's nowhere to go, where I either have to react with the trail elbow or lift the arms to create space. Neither of those are ideal for the most part. So what we would want to do instead is work on rehearsals where we're maybe building in just a little bit of some hand depth, but keeping the structure here in front of me and pretty controlled without over rotating my hips. So it's going to feel like my arms in that scenario are controlling most of the takeaway. And then I'm adding my hip turn from P2 onwards, so that now in this scenario, I'm actually completing my range of motion with my pelvis as I get to the top. Whereas if I have an over rotation of the pelvis early in my backswing, I can get stuck here and then have some sort of negative reaction that we don't want to be seeing. Okay, so if you're somebody who has way too much hip turn early and it's creating problems, in an ideal world, we would want to fix it. Now, I will preface this by saying if you're somebody who has a bunch of hip turn really early, but you seem to manage the structure at the top quite well, and it does not penalize how your body moves through the ball later on, it's not always a necessity to clean it up. Again, at the end of the day, just because somebody does something doesn't mean it always creates a problem. But in more cases than not, it would penalize the hand path and arm structure. So if you're somebody who's in trouble and you see a lot of hip turn really early, I would look to cleaning that up by maybe reducing how much rotation you have to the pelvis from P1 to P2, so until shaft parallel, and then try to add it in later.